Captain Elena Vasquez slammed her palm on the negotiation table, the sound echoing through the vast chamber like a gunshot in a cathedral. The holographic displays flickered, casting blue shadows over the assembled aliens. Tentacled diplomats from the Zorath Collective, feathered envoys from the Etherians, and the hulking, stone-skinned reps from the Grom Empire, all eyes multifaceted and glowing, turned to her. Beside her, Dr. Liam Chen gripped his datapad tighter, his knuckles whitening while Ambassador Kira Novak stood rigid, her face a mask of controlled fury. "We've heard enough," Elena said, her voice steady but laced with the grit of someone who'd stared down asteroid storms. She pushed back her chair, the metal scraping against the polished floor of the Galactic Concord Hall. The air hummed with translators buzzing in protest, but she didn't wait for their scripted outrage. Liam shot her a glance, half warning, half agreement, and rose too, his cautious nature warring with the fire in his eyes. Kira was already moving, her steps measured, leading the way toward the exit. The delegation followed in silence, their boots thudding in unison against the iridescent tiles. No speeches, no final pleas, just the weight of decisions made light years from home. Behind them, the chamber erupted. Shouts in a dozen languages overlapped, holograms glitching as the Zorath delegates' tentacles flailed, knocking over a ceremonial orb that shattered like glass thunder. As the massive doors hissed shut, sealing them from the chaos, Elena felt the first tremor. Not in the station itself. The Concord Hall was a behemoth orbiting neutral space, but in the subtle shift of the stars visible through the viewport. Alerts began pinging on Liam's datapad, trade routes fracturing, alliances splintering in real time. Earth's walkout wasn't a bluff. It was a fracture line cracking the galaxy's fragile spine. They reached the shuttle bay without a word, the silence thicker than the recycled air. Kira punched in the access code, her fingers precise despite the tension coiling in her shoulders. "That was bolder than our brief," she said finally, voice low as the ramp lowered. Elena met her gaze, the captain's brave streak shining through in the set of her jaw. "Bold gets results, Ambassador. Waiting gets us colonized." Liam boarded last, scanning the feeds. "It's already hitting the nets. The Grom are mobilizing fleets, panic, not preparation. If we don't get back to Earth fast, this silence of ours might echo into war." He strapped in, his witty edge dulled by the stakes. The shuttle's engines whined to life, propelling them away from the hall toward the void where humanity's gamble hung in the balance. But as the station shrank in the rear view screen, a new alert blared, an unmarked vessel shadowing them, its signature Grom by design. Not panic, then. Retaliation. Elena's hand went to the controls, her mind racing through evasion vectors. The galaxy wasn't collapsing in chaos yet, but it was close, and their quiet exit had just lit the fuse. Captain Elena Vasquez gripped the edge of the conference table, her knuckles whitening as the holographic display flickered with incoming alerts. The chamber's ambient hum had turned to a cacophony, shouts from the Krell delegate, a shrill whine from the avian Zorath envoy, but she tuned it out, eyes locked on Ambassador Hale's retreating back. He'd stormed out without a word, the heavy doors sealing behind him with a pneumatic hiss that echoed like a final judgment. "Captain," murmured Lieutenant Kira Voss at her side, voice low and steady despite the tremor in her hand. Kira was the cautious one, always double-checking protocols, but now her tablet screen blazed with red warnings. Interstellar trade routes freezing, Allied fleets pulling back. "We need to move. The Council's fracturing faster than predicted." Elena nodded sharply, shoving back her chair. The room spun into motion around them, delegates scrambling, aides barking into comms, but she focused on the exit. Hale had left them here as the human contingent's anchor, his silent exit a calculated blow to the Galactic Concord's hypocrisy. Earth's resources had been siphoned for decades under mutual aid pacts that benefited everyone but humanity. And today, with the latest demand for our fusion tech without reciprocity, Hale had drawn the line, walked out, left the galaxy to stew in its own entitlement. They pushed through the throng, Elena's boots thudding against the polished obsidian floor of the Nexus station. Alarms blared softly in the corridors, lights dimming as emergency protocols kicked in. "Status on the shuttle?" she asked, not breaking stride. "Delayed," Kira replied, fingers flying over her device. "Some kind of blockade. Zorath ships are maneuvering into position. They're not attacking, but they're boxing us in." Elena's jaw tightened. The Zorath, with their feather-ruffled indignation and razor-sharp beaks, had always been the loudest critics of human isolationism. Now it seemed they were turning words to action. Behind them, the chamber doors burst open again and a hulking Telleran security officer lumbered into view, his forearms waving for attention. "Humans, halt!" The officer's voice boomed, translated imperfectly through the universal comm. "Ambassador Hale's departure violates protocol. You will return and explain." Elena didn't slow. "Protocol's dead, friend. Tell your council to chase their own tails." She rounded a corner, Kira matching her pace, the station's vast atrium opening up ahead like a star field trapped in crystal. But as they reached the docking bays, the real snag hit. Shuttles idled, but a swarm of maintenance drones buzzed erratically, their programming glitching from the chaos. One clipped Elena's shoulder, sparking against her uniform. "Damn it," she muttered, swatting it away. The bays were a snarl of locked hatches and flickering holosigns, the usual efficiency of the Nexus crumbling under panicked overrides. Kira hacked into a nearby panel, her brow furrowed in concentration. "I've got partial access, but the primary route's jammed. Rival factions are already scrambling for control of the jump gates." Elena scanned the bay, spotting their sleek Eagle-class shuttle wedged between two larger alien vessels. A resource shortage was brewing. Fuel cells were rationed in the uproar, and without Hale's codes they were just two officers and a powder keg. "We improvise," she said, voice firm. "Rig the auxiliary thrusters. Get us out before this turns into a shooting gallery." As Kira worked the controls, a shadow fell over them, a Zorath frigate edging into view through the viewport, its engines glowing like predatory eyes. The galaxy wasn't just collapsing. It was unraveling thread by thread, and Earth's silence had pulled the first one loose. Elena felt the weight of it, not as fear but as fuel. They weren't running blind. They were the spark. The shuttle's hatch groaned open and they piled in, Kira sealing it just as the first tremor shook the station. A distant explosion, or maybe just the Concorde's fragile piece shattering for good. Captain Alara Voss gripped the armrest of her shuttle's command chair, her knuckles whitening as the viewscreen flickered with incoming transmissions. The alien fleet's distress signals overlapped in a cacophony of languages, each one more frantic than the last. "They're fracturing," she muttered to her first officer, Jax Harlan, who leaned over the console, his brow furrowed in concentration. Jax had always been the cautious one, the engineer who preferred schematics to speeches, but now his fingers flew across the controls, rerouting power to stabilize their shields against the debris field expanding from the core worlds. The delegation's walkout had been less than 12 hours ago, a calculated silence from Earth's representatives that left the Galactic Concord in stunned limbo. Ambassador Reyes had led it, her final words echoing through the assembly halls. No more concessions, no more bending to the whims of species who viewed humanity as upstarts. Now, without human mediators, the fragile alliances were unraveling. Pirate clans from the outer rims were striking at trade lanes, and the crystalline hives of the Zorath were mobilizing their swarms, claiming territorial rights long disputed. Ilara's shuttle, the Pioneer, darted through the edge of the chaos, evading a rogue asteroid kicked loose from a shattered mining outpost. "Incoming hail from the Krell battleship," Jax reported, his voice steady despite the sweat beading on his forehead. The Krell, those hulking reptilians with their honor-bound fleets, had been tentative allies during the talks. If they were calling now, it meant the fissures were deep. She nodded, activating the link. The viewscreen resolved into the scarred visage of Admiral Grask, his scales etched with battle runes that glowed faintly in the dim light of his bridge. "Human vessel," he rumbled, his translated voice like grinding stone. "Your kind abandons us to this madness. The Zorath Vanguard breaches our perimeter. Without your ingenuity, we fall." Alara met his gaze, her brave streak pushing back the knot of doubt in her gut. She'd served under Reyes for years, witnessed humanity's quiet contributions, the fusion drives that powered half the galaxy's ships, the neural nets that predicted stellar flares. But admitting that now felt like leverage she couldn't afford to squander. "Admiral, we're not abandoning anyone. We're regrouping. Transmit your coordinates. We'll buy you time." Jack shot her a sidelong glance, his witty edge surfacing in a whisper. "Buy time with what? Our shuttle's got enough firepower to annoy a frigate, not stop a hive swarm." But he was already plotting a course, his cautious nature yielding to the urgency. As the Pioneer accelerated, Alara watched the sensor readouts. Zorath drones multiplying like shadows in the void, their bioluminescent trails weaving a net around the Krell formation. The challenge wasn't just survival, it was proving that humanity's exit hadn't doomed them all. One wrong move and the galaxy's collapse would claim Earth's outposts first, stranding billions in the crossfire. They closed in on the battle coordinates, the shuttle's engines humming with overclocked strain. Alara unstrapped, grabbing her toolkit from the bulkhead. Jax, prep the EMP emitters. If we can't fight them head-on, we'll blind them. He nodded, a spark of camaraderie lighting his eyes, the kind forged in late-night repairs and shared risks. The Admiral's fleet loomed ahead, lasers carving paths through the encroaching swarm. But the Krell ships were taking hits, their hulls venting plasma. Docking clamps engaged with a shudder, and Alara led the way onto Grask's bridge, her team of 2 technicians in tow, small cast, tight focus. The air was thick with the scent of ozone and reptilian musk. Grask towered over them, his claws flexing. You come to aid? Or to gloat? To adapt, Alara replied, already directing her people to the Krell's auxiliary systems. The Zorath were relentless, their drones adapting to energy weapons by dispersing into fog-like clusters. Human tech, though, had a trick, modulated frequencies that disrupted their hive-mind links without permanent harm. It was a negotiation tool, not a weapon of last resort. As explosions rocked the ship, Jax jury-rigged the emitters into the Krell's grid, his hands steady. This'll feed back if we're not synced, he warned. But Alara saw the plan forming, clever, earned through grit. The first pulse fired, and the Zorath drones faltered, their formations dissolving into erratic spins. Cheers erupted from the Krell crew, a rare sound like thunder rolling distant. But the victory was fleeting. Sensors blared. A Zorath queen ship emerging from hyperspace, its tendrils coiling toward the fray. Grask's eyes narrowed. They escalate. Your walkout invites this. Alara wiped sweat from her brow, the cost sinking in. Lives lost, alliances tested. Then we escalate smarter. Transmit to your allies, humanity's not gone. We're just done playing by your rules. The bridge hummed with renewed purpose, but in the back of her mind, the lingering consequence loomed. If this held, the galaxy might stabilize. If not, Earth's silence would echo as the death knell. Captain Elena Vasquez gripped the armrest of her shuttle's co-pilot seat, her knuckles whitening as the vessel shuddered through the asteroid field's edge. The holographic display flickered, showing the pursuing Krell dreadnought closing in, its plasma cannons charging with an ominous hum that vibrated the hull. They're gaining, she muttered to Jax, her engineer, who was already elbow-deep in the console, rerouting power from life support to the engines. Jax wiped sweat from his brow, his wiry frame hunched over the sparking panel. Give me 30 seconds. The inertial dampeners are fried from that last hit. If we push the thrusters now, we'll all be pancakes. His voice was steady, laced with that dry humor that had kept the crew sane through the delegation's fallout. Back on the Galactic Concord station, Earth's walkout had been a calculated silence, a refusal to sign the treaty that would have ceded human colonies to the Vorath Empire. Now, with the galaxy fracturing into alliances and skirmishes, their shuttle was a target, smuggling vital data on the Vorath's hidden fleet. The comms crackled. This is Captain Vasquez of the UNS Herald. State your intentions or we'll consider this an act of aggression. Elena's words were clipped, buying time. The Krell response came in guttural bursts, translated by the AI. Demands for surrender. Accusations of espionage. She glanced at Dr. Lena Corvin, the xenobiologist strapped in the jump seat, her tablet clutched like a shield. Lena's cautious nature had made her the perfect analyst for the delegation, always double-checking motives, spotting the Vorath's deceptions before anyone else. Now her face was pale, but her eyes burned with resolve. A jolt rocked the shuttle as a warning shot grazed the shields. Alarms blared. Jax yanked a cable free. Got it. Engines hot, brace! Elena slammed the throttle forward. The shuttle lurched, weaving through a cluster of tumbling rocks the size of warships. The dreadnought's beam lanced past, vaporizing an asteroid in a burst of molten debris that peppered their hull. They're locking on, Lena said, her voice tight. That data chip, if they board us, the Vorath get everything. Human shipyards, colony defenses. She trailed off, fingers flying over her tablet, encrypting the files one last time. Elena nodded, her brave streak pushing doubt aside. We lose it, the galaxy's chaos becomes our extinction. Jax, plot a course to the nebula, it'll mask our signature. The engineer grinned faintly. Nebula's a graveyard for scanners, but it's crawling with ion storms. One wrong turn and we're space dust. The shuttle dove, engines roaring as they skimmed a massive boulder, its shadow swallowing the viewport. Behind, the dreadnought hesitated, its massive form silhouetted against the stars, too bulky to follow precisely. Elena's heart pounded in rhythm with the thrumming drives. This wasn't just evasion. It was defiance. A thread in the unraveling tapestry Earth's silence had begun. As they pierced the nebula's swirling clouds, colors bloomed across the hull, gases igniting in electric blues and furious reds. The sensors went blind, but Jax's manual nav kept them threading the storms. A proximity alert screamed, wreckage ahead, remnants of some long-forgotten battle. Elena banked hard, the shuttle groaning. Hold on! They skimmed the debris field, shrapnel pinging off the shields. Lena leaned forward. Wait, that signature. It's human. An old probe from the first wave. Her caution flipped to excitement. If we sync with it, we could bounce our signal, make it look like we're ghosts. Jax's eyes lit up. Clever. Risky. But it beats dying out here. He patched in, the shuttle's systems linking to the derelict husk. For a moment, silence reigned, broken only by the nebula's whispers against the hull. Then, the dreadnought's voice pierced the static. Surrender your vessel. Resistance is futile. Elena smirked, keying the mic. Tell your Vorath masters Earth's not playing their game anymore. She cut the line, the nebula swallowing their trail. But as they emerged on the far side, a new blip appeared on the long-range scan. A Vorath frigate waiting like a predator in the dark. The cost of their escape was mounting, and the data burned hotter in Lena's hands. The galaxy's collapse was just beginning, and they were in its heart. Elena Ruiz gripped the armrest of the shuttle as it shuddered through the final approach to Earth's orbital station. The hum of the engines vibrated up her spine, a reminder that they were no longer spectators in the galactic farce. Marcus sat across from her, his fingers drumming a silent rhythm on his datapad, eyes fixed on the screen where feeds from the core worlds flickered like dying stars. Incoming reports from Vega Prime, he said, voice low. Riots in the markets. The Krell delegation just invoked emergency powers, suspending trade routes. She nodded, not trusting her throat to form words yet. The walkout had been her call, a calculated fracture in the Galactic Concord's brittle facade. But watching it splinter everything in real time felt like holding a live wire. Zorak, the insectoid envoy from the fringe hives, shifted in his harness beside her, his mandibles clicking softly. A habit she'd learned meant unease. Humans act decisively, he buzzed through the translator. But the Concord was a web, Elena. Pull one thread and the spiders scatter. Or devour each other. The shuttle docked with a metallic clang, and the hatch hissed open to reveal a corridor buzzing with activity. Station personnel in crisp blue uniforms swarmed the bay, their faces a mix of grim determination and barely concealed awe. Captain Hale, Elena's old contact from the fleet, met them at the airlock, his salute crisp. Ambassador, welcome home. President's briefing you in 10, and the galaxy's lighting up like a supernova out there. They moved through the throng, Marcus murmuring updates into his comm. The Thulari fleet's mobilizing toward the neutral zones. No declaration of war, but their broadcasts are calling Earth's exit a betrayal of cosmic order. Elena's jaw tightened. Betrayal. As if the conquered hadn't bled colonies dry for centuries, hoarding tech while humans scraped by on ingenuity and grit. In the secure lift to the command deck, Zorak's compound eyes gleamed under the harsh lights. I stayed with you because your kind sees patterns others miss. But my hive questions now. If the web collapses, where do the fringes stand? Elena met his gaze, her voice steady despite the knot in her chest. With us if you want a fair shake. The Conquered was a cage for everyone but the core worlds. We're breaking it open. The lift doors parted into the briefing room, where holographic displays swirled with data streams. Red alerts pulsing over trade lanes. Green icons marking human outposts holding firm. President Navarro stood at the head of the table, her silver hair pulled back, eyes sharp as she gestured them in. Elena, you've started a fire, good. But it's spreading faster than we modeled. The Andromed relay's already jammed with refugee signals. We need your read. Can we rally allies before the core fractures into alliances we can't predict? Marcus projected the latest intel, his cautious nature shining through as he highlighted risks. Worst case, The Krell and Thulari form a block, cut off our helium-3 shipments. Our reactors go dark in months. Elena leaned forward, tracing a finger over the hollow map where Earth's solitary blue dot glowed amid the chaos. They won't. Not if we hit them with what the Concord ignored, our networks. Smugglers, independents, the fringe worlds like Zorax. We've got the people who know the back roads, the hacks that bypass their firewalls. Zorak chittered approval, his claws tapping the table. My hives concede the whispers. But it costs ships, lives. Your walkout demands proof, human. Show the galaxy your ingenuity isn't just bold words. Navarro's gaze lingered on Elena, weighing the unspoken toll. The ambassador felt it too. The weight of stations like this one, built from salvaged wrecks, now thrust into the storm's eye. We'll prove it, Elena said, her mind already spinning contingencies. A shadow crossed the hollow as a new alert flashed. Pirate swarms massing near the outer rim, emboldened by the power vacuum. The fire was here, and it was time to forge tools from the flames. As the meeting stretched into strategy, Elena caught Marcus's eye. He offered a tight smile, the first crack in his reserve. Together they dove into the plans, voices overlapping in the tense air, human grit weaving through alien doubt, turning chaos into the first threads of something new. But outside, the stars watched, indifferent, as the galaxy's unraveling tightened its grip. Captain Elena Vasquez gripped the armrest of her shuttle's console, the hum of the engines vibrating through her bones as the docking clamps released with a metallic groan. Stars streaked past the viewport, indifferent to the fracture she'd just witnessed in the Galactic Assembly Hall. Her co-pilot, Marcus Hale, wiped sweat from his brow, his usual wry grin replaced by a tight-lipped stare. That was no diplomatic spat cap. That was a goddamn declaration. The shuttle lurched into hyperspace, the jump drive whining as it folded space around them. Elena didn't respond immediately. Her mind replayed the moment. The Zephyri delegate's holographic sneer, the abrupt cutoff of Earth's transmission feed, and the silent exodus of the human contingent. No shouts, no ultimatums, just chairs scraping back, boots on polished floors, and the galaxy's collective gasp echoing in the vacuum of the chamber. Alarms blared from the comms panel. Marcus lunged for it, fingers flying over the controls. Incoming priority from Sol Command. They're scrambling the fleet, every ship, every outpost. The Krell Dominion's already mobilizing. Reports of blockades at the outer rims. Elena's jaw clenched. The Krell, with their chitinous fleets and endless drone swarms, had been itching for dominance since the Assembly's fragile peace. Earth's walkout, it was the spark. Without human mediators, the ones who'd brokered the last truce with sheer stubborn negotiation, the alliances were unraveling like frayed cables. Patch it through, she said, her voice steady despite the knot in her gut. The screen flickered to life, revealing Admiral Kiravos's stern face, lines etched deeper than Elena remembered from their academy days. Vasquez, Hale, you're the closest to the neutral zone. Relays down, so you're our eyes. The Zephyri claim we sabotaged their core world relay. Pure lies, but it's mobilizing the fringe worlds against us.
Get to Epsilon Station.
Secure the data vaults before the chaos hits. If we lose those alliance codes, the galaxy fractures for good. Understood, Admiral. Elena replied, but Voss was already cutting the feed, her image dissolving into static. The stakes hit like a gravity well. Epsilon Station held the encrypted packs that bound the galaxy's trade lanes, defense grids, everything. If rivals cracked them first, Earth would be isolated, starved of resources, picked apart. Marcus throttled up, the shuttle shuddering as it accelerated toward the station's coordinates. Clever plan, walking out in silence. Let them stew in their own panic, but now, we're the bait. Elena nodded, pulling up schematics on her tablet. The station orbited a gas giant, its rings a natural shield, but also a death trap for evasive maneuvers. Drones from automated defenses would be online, and with comms jammed, no overrides. We improvise. You handle the docking. I'll breach the vaults. If Krell scouts show, we vent the auxiliary bays. Buy time. He chuckled, though it lacked humor. Humans against the stars. Always the underdogs with the dirty tricks. The gas giant loomed ahead, swirling storms painting the viewport in bruised purples. Elena suited up, mag boots clanking against the deck, her pulse rifle slung over her shoulder. The air recyclers hissed, carrying the faint scent of ozone from the straining systems. As the shuttle skimmed the rings, icy particles pinged off the hull like gunfire. Proximity alert screamed. Marcus banked hard, dodging a cluster of debris. Wait, not debris. Probes. Sci-Fi scout drones, sleek and needle-thin, swarming like angry hornets. They're here already. Evasive. Elena braced as the shuttle twisted, G-forces pinning her to the bulkhead. Laser fire lanced through the void, grazing their shields with sizzling heat. Marcus's hands blurred on the controls, firing countermeasures. Flares blooming in the black, drawing the drone's fire. One clipped their wing, sparks erupting from the panel beside him. "Shields at 60%, he shouted. "I can loop us into the rings, lose them in the ice field." "Do it." Elena hit the airlock cycle, the inner door sealing behind her with a pneumatic sigh. Through the porthole, she watched the rings swallow the shuttle, shards of frozen methane shattering against the view. The drones pursued, their formations tightening, but the debris field played havoc. 2 exploded in chain reactions, shrapnel blooming like fireworks. The station's silhouette emerged, a spindly lattice of girders and domes glinting under the giant's auroras. Marcus's voice crackled over the intercom. "Docking in 10. But Cap scans show borders, Krell signatures on the outer decks. They're inside." Elena's gloved hand tightened on her rifle. No time for fear, only the job. The shuttle clamped onto the port with a jolt, and she cycled out into the station's dim corridors. Emergency lights pulsed red, casting long shadows. Footsteps clawed chitinous echoed from the vents. She moved low, pulse steady, the weight of the galaxy's fragile piece pressing on her shoulders. One vault, one download, and maybe they could glue this mess back together. Or die trying. Captain Alara Voss gripped the armrest of her shuttle's command chair, the vibration of the engines humming through her bones like a distant storm. Alarms blared in staccato bursts, red lights painting the cockpit in bloody hues. "Status, Reyes," she barked. Eyes locked on the view screen where debris fields swirled like angry hornets around the derelict station. Lieutenant Marco Reyes wiped sweat from his brow, fingers flying over his console. "Shields at 40%, ma'am. That last pulse from the core breach nearly cooked us. Life support's holding, but we've got incoming. 3 Raider ships closing fast from Sector 9. His voice cracked just a fraction, the weight of their isolation pressing in. They were the last human vessel in this forsaken arm of the galaxy, cut off since the delegation's walkout had ignited the interstellar powder keg. Ilara nodded sharply, her mind racing through options thinner than ration packs. The galaxy's collapse wasn't hyperbole. Alliances shattered overnight when Earth pulled its envoys, leaving trade routes exposed and old grudges to fester. Now these raiders, likely opportunistic scavengers from the fractured Krell collective, smelled blood in the void. Helm, evasive pattern Delta, don't let them box us in. And Reyes, hail them. Standard frequency. Let's see if they're here for salvage or slaughter. The shuttle lurched as thrusters fired, twisting away from an incoming plasma bolt that scorched past the hull. Reyes patched the comms, his face a mask of forced calm. "This is UNS Shuttle Persephone. Identify yourselves and state intentions. We're on a diplomatic relay." A guttural voice crackled through the speakers, laced with synthetic distortion. "Diplomatic? Ha! Your kind walked away, left the stars to burn. We're claiming what's left. Power down and eject, or we'll vent you into the black." Ilara's jaw tightened. Diplomatic relay was a half-truth. They were ferrying the last encrypted data from the delegation's final hours, proof of the betrayal that started it all. Losing it meant Earth blind to the encroaching chaos. "Not today," she muttered. Reyes armed the countermeasures. "Prepare for micro-jump if we get a window." The raiders pressed their attack, sleek shadows darting in formation. One clipped their flank, sending sparks dancing across the bulkhead. Ilara felt the deck shudder, a reminder of their fragility. Outgunned, outnumbered, but humans didn't yield to bluster. She keyed the internal comm. "Engineer Patel, how's the jury rig holding on the auxiliary drive?" From the engine room, Dr. Aisha Patel's voice came steady, though laced with strain. "It's a patchwork miracle, Captain. But another hit like that and we'll be drifting scrap. Give me 2 minutes to reroute power, maybe squeeze out a burst for that jump." 2 minutes in a dogfight felt like eternity. Ilara leaned forward, plotting their escape vector mentally. The station's decaying orbit offered cover, a graveyard of twisted metal from the initial riots. "Make it one, Aisha. Reyes, deploy the decoys. Let's give them something to chase." Flares erupted from their bays, Holographic ghosts mimicking the shuttle's signature. The lead raider veered, firing wildly into the illusion. Ilara seized the moment. Now helm full burn toward the debris field. The Persephone dove into the wreckage, hull groaning as they wove through jagged spires. Alarms wailed anew, proximity alerts flashing. Behind them, the raiders split, two pursuing while the third circled wide. A bolt grazed their wing, shearing off a sensor array in a burst of fire. Damage report, Ilara snapped. Port stabilizers compromised, Reyes replied. We're limping but intact. Jump drive charging, 40 seconds. Patel's voice cut in. Captain, I've got a fix, but it's risky. The field's magnetic interference could scramble the cords. We might end up anywhere. Better anywhere than here. Ilara's fingers hovered over the abort switch, the cost flashing in her mind. The data, their mission, the fragile hope Earth clung to amid the galactic unraveling. Commit. On my mark. The raiders closed, weapons hot. Ilara counted down silently, the void outside a blur of ruin. Mark. Reality folded around them in a wrench of warped space. The shuttle emerged with a jolt, stars unfamiliar and cold. Reyes exhaled. We're clear, ma'am, but... Location? Ilara scanned the readouts, a knot forming in her gut. Not clear skies, but the edge of a nebula, uncharted, hostile. The data was safe, but their path home just grew thorns. And in the distance, a faint signal pulsed. Another ship, waiting. Friend or foe? Only the Black knew. Captain Elena Vasquez gripped the edge of the console, her knuckles white against the humming metal. Alarms blared in the cramped bridge of the UNS Vanguard, red lights pulsing like a frantic heartbeat. Status on the warp core? She barked, her voice cutting through the din. Engineer Raj Patel wiped sweat from his brow, fingers flying over the diagnostic panel. Containment breach imminent, Captain. We've got maybe 10 minutes before she goes critical. His usual calm demeanor cracked, eyes darting to the viewport where the debris field of YT was once the Galactic Council's flagship, twisted in the void. Lieutenant Kira Voss, the Xeno-diplomat, paced behind them, her tablet clutched like a shield. This wasn't supposed to happen. The Krell delegation promised safe passage after the walkout. If the core blows, it'll take out half the sector, and any hope of salvage talks with the remnants. Elena shot her a glance, sharp and unyielding. Promises from a collapsing empire mean nothing now. Raj, reroute auxiliary power to the stabilizers. We need to limp to the nearest jump point. She didn't wait for acknowledgement, already plotting vectors on the holographic display. The galaxy had unraveled in the wake of Earth's silent exit from the Council. Alliances fracturing, trade routes turning to battlegrounds. Their delegation's departure had been the spark. Now, rogue factions like the Krell scavenged the ashes, and the Vanguard was caught in the crossfire. A shudder rocked the ship, hull groaning as another micrometeorite grazed the shields. Kira stumbled, catching herself on Elena's chair. Incoming hail from the Krell frigate. They're demanding we surrender the data core, everything we pulled from the Council's archives before the walkout. Raj snorted, not looking up. Surrender? They'd strip us for parts. Captain, if we vent the plasma relays, it might buy us time, but we'll be dead in the water. Elena's jaw tightened. The data core held the galaxy's blueprints, trade packs, tech specs, the fragile web that had held everything together until humanity said no more. Walking out had been Earth's bold stand against exploitation, but now it painted a target on every human vessel. Patch me through, she said to Kira. Let's see what bluster they've got. The view screen flickered, resolving into the snarling visage of Commander Vexcar, his chitinous mandibles clicking in agitation. Human vessel, your interference ends here. Hand over the core or join the Council's wreckage. Elena's response was ice. We're not your salvage, Vexcar. Earth's out. Deal with it. She cut the line before he could retort, turning to her crew. Raj, initiate the vent. Kira, prep the evasion protocols. We're not dying out here for their ego. As the ship lurched from the plasma release, a brilliant azure plume erupting from the aft vents, Elena felt the weight of it all. The galaxy's chaos was their inheritance now, but surrender wasn't in the human playbook. Not yet. The Krell frigate accelerated, its weapons arrays glowing with predatory intent. Raj's hands trembled slightly as he sealed the core breach, makeshift patches holding by ingenuity alone. Shields at 30%. They're locking tractors. Kira's voice was steady, laced with that wry edge she reserved for dire straits. Tractors? Cute. Like we're a derelict freighter. She keyed in a sequence, deploying decoy drones, Human tech, cobbled from old Earth mining rigs, mimicking the Vanguard's signature. Elena nodded approval, her mind racing through contingencies. The jump point was close, a flickering anomaly in the debris-littered expanse, but the Krell were faster. Full burn on thrusters. Let's make them chase ghosts. The Vanguard surged forward, engines whining in protest. Drones scattered, drawing fire as laser volleys lit the void. One drone shattered in a bloom of fire, close enough to rattle their hull. Inside, the air grew thick with ozone and tension. They're adapting, Raj warned, screens showing the frigate veering toward the real ship. Those bugs learn quick. Kira leaned over the console, her fingers dancing. Not quick enough. Rerouting sensor ghosts. Make it look like we're splitting course. The display fractured into phantom signatures, a digital sleight of hand born from human coders who thrived on outsmarting algorithms. Fexcar's frustrated roar echoed through a stolen comm burst before cutting out. The frigate hesitated, weapons firing wildly into the decoys. Elna allowed herself a grim smile. That's our window. Punch it, Raj. The ship dove toward the jump point, debris whipping past like vengeful spirits. Alarms peaked as the warp field engaged, space folding around them in a nauseating twist. They emerged on the other side, stars unfamiliar but safe for the moment. Panting, Raj slumped back. Core stable, but we're blind on long range. That breach fried the arrays. Kira set her tablet down, exhaling. And the Krell? They'll regroup. The galaxy's not done collapsing because we dodged one bullet. Elena stared at the swirling nebula ahead, a remnant of some ancient war. The walkout had freed Earth, but the cost was this endless scramble. Then we adapt, plot a course for the outer colonies. We've got the data. Time to build something new. As the Vanguard limped onward, the crew shared a quiet nod, the bond forged in fire. Chaos reigned, but humanity's grit burned brighter. Captain Elena Vasquez gripped the edge of the console, her knuckles whitening as the holographic display flickered with incoming distress signals from the core worlds. The bridge of the UNS Vanguard hummed with urgency. Every crew member locked in their stations, but it was her voice that cut through the static. Redirect auxiliary power to the warp coils. We can't let that fleet pin us here. Beside her, Dr. Raj Patel hunched over his tablet, fingers flying across the interface. Sweat beaded on his forehead, but his eyes burned with that unyielding focus. The same grit that had gotten them through the blockade 2 jumps back. It's not just the coils, Elena. The quantum entanglement's fraying. If we push it, we risk a cascade failure across the entire ship. He didn't look up, but his words carried the weight of a man who'd already calculated the odds and found them wanting. From the tactical station, Sergeant Kira Voss snorted, her scarred hands steady on the targeting array. Odds? We've been defying odds since the walkout. Those Zarvian cruisers are closing. 3 minutes to firing range. Either we jump or we fight, but sitting here's not an option. Her voice was all edges, honed by years on the front lines, but there was no bravado, just the raw truth of survival. Elena nodded, her mind racing through the fragments of intel they'd pieced together since the delegation's exodus. The galaxy was unraveling, trade routes severed, alliances shattering like brittle glass. Earth's bold silence had exposed the fragility of it all. The Interstellar Council's corruption laid bare, now boiling over into open skirmishes. But here, in the shadowed fringes of the Orion Arm, their small task force was the only thing standing between a refugee convoy and annihilation. She couldn't afford doubt. Raj, can you stabilize it? Even for one jump? He paused, the tablet's glow casting sharp shadows on his face. In that hesitation, Elena saw the toll. The endless nights rerouting failing systems, jury-rigging alien tech with human ingenuity. I can try a feedback loop through the auxiliary reactors. It'll burn out the backups, but it might hold long enough to get us to the nebula. His tone was cautious, the voice of reason in a storm, but he was already initiating the sequence, fingers blurring. Alarms blared as the first Zarvian shots glanced off their shields, the ship shuddering like a beast in pain. Kira fired back without hesitation, her volleys precise, carving through the lead cruiser's hull. Got one. But they're swarming. Looks like they're herding us toward that debris field. Explosions bloomed in the void, silent fire against the stars, and for a moment, the bridge filled with the acrid scent of overheating circuits. Elena's heart pounded, but she forced her voice steady. Kira, keep them off our tail. Raj, make it happen. It wasn't a command born of rank, but of trust. the kind forged in the fire of the council chamber. When Earth's representatives had stood as one and walked away, dooming the old order but igniting something fiercer in its place, the doctor muttered under his breath, a string of equations half in English, half in code. Then a low whine built in the ship's bones, the warp drive protesting as it clawed back to life. "It's holding, barely. Jump in 10. Kira whooped, a rare crack in her armor as she dodged another barrage. "That's my wizard. Eat plasma, you scaled bastards!" Her shots lit up the viewport, turning the pursuing fleet into fleeting shadows. But as the countdown ticked, Elna caught a new signal piercing the chaos. A faint hail from the convoy ahead, voices in panic. "Vanguard, we're taking fire! Coordinates locked, please, we're dead in the water." The weight settled on her then, heavier than any gravity well. One jump could save them all or doom the refugees to the void. She straightened, decision made. "Alter course. We pull them in first." Raj's head snapped up, eyes wide. "Elena, that'll overload everything. We adapt or we die," she said simply, echoing the creed that had carried humanity this far. Kira grinned fiercely, already plotting the intercept while Raj dove back into his work, cursing softly but complying. The ship lurched forward, engines screaming as the galaxy's chaos pressed in from all sides. In that fragile moment, with shields failing and allies crying out, Elena felt the spark of what came after the fall. Not just survival, but the stubborn will to rebuild. Captain Alara Voss gripped the armrest of her shuttle's command chair as the vessel shuddered through the asteroid field's edge. Alarms blared in staccato bursts, painting the cockpit in red strobes that danced across her face. Beside her, Dr. Kyren, the xenobiologist, muttered calculations under his breath, his fingers flying over a holographic display. "We're clear, barely. Those Krell interceptors are gaining, but their scanners won't pick us up in this debris soup." The shuttle lurched again, a near miss with a tumbling rock the size of a freighter. Ilara's jaw tightened. She'd flown worse in her Navy days, but never with the weight of a collapsing alliance on her shoulders. The galaxy's fragile peace had shattered the moment Earth's delegation stormed out of the conclave chamber 3 cycles ago, denouncing the Orion Compact's hidden clauses that favored the core worlds. Now, with trade routes fracturing and border skirmishes igniting like dry tinder, humanity's outposts were prime targets. Their mission: reach the neutral station at Vega Prime, deliver intel on the Compact's saboteurs, and rally any sympathetic factions before the Krell Empire claimed the void. "Status on the drive core?" Ilara asked, her voice steady despite the sweat beading on her brow. Kai glanced up, his witty edge dulled by exhaustion. "Holding at 70%. That EMP burst from the last skirmish fried half the relays, but I jury-rigged the backups. We're not outrunning them, though. Best we can do is lose them in the field." She nodded, eyes fixed on the viewport where jagged silhouettes loomed like silent predators. The Krell, with their chitinous fleets and unyielding hive mind tactics, had been the first to pounce after the walkout. Earth's silence had been interpreted as weakness, not resolve. But Ilara knew better. Back home, shipyards burned overtime, and diplomats like Ambassador Hale were forging back-channel pacts with the fringes. If they could just get this data to Vega, proof of the Compact's engineered famines on outer rims, it might tip the scales. A proximity alert pierced the hum of the engines. "Incoming fire!" Kai shouted, slamming the evasion controls. The shuttle banked hard, lasers slicing through the void mere meters off their hull. Alara's stomach flipped as they wove between boulders, the G-forces pinning her against the seat. One bolt grazed the wing, sending sparks across the console. She tasted blood from biting her lip. Focus, adapt, survive. "Divert power to shields," she ordered, unstrapping to lean over Kai's panel. Her hands, calloused from years of manual overrides, brushed his as she rerouted auxiliary lines. Together they watched the energy surge stabilize the barriers just as another volley hammered home. The ship groaned, but held. The Krell fighter banked into view, its segmented form glinting under distant starlight, a mechanical insect closing for the kill. Ilara's mind raced. Straight evasion wouldn't cut it. "Kai, those asteroids, any with metallic composition? We can use the debris to mask a slingshot maneuver." He grinned faintly, the spark of ingenuity returning. "Scanning. Yes, the cluster at bearing 240. Iron-rich enough to scramble their sensors if we thread the needle." His fingers danced again, plotting the vector. The shuttle accelerated, engines whining in protest, hurtling toward the densest tangle of rocks. As they plunged in, the world outside became a blur of gray and shadow. Collision warnings screamed, but Alara steered with precision born of instinct, clipping a fragment that spun them wildly. Kai braced, yelling, "Now! Deploy the decoy flares!" She hit the release, and false heat signatures bloomed behind them, drawing the Krell pursuer into a fatal embrace with an unseen boulder. The explosion lit the field like a newborn sun, debris pinging off their hull. Silence fell, broken only by the settling hum of systems. Alara exhaled, slumping back. Vega's 2 hours out. If the station's still neutral. Kai wiped his brow, meeting her gaze. It better be. We've got the proof, but without allies, it's just whispers in the dark. The shuttle emerged from the field, stars steady ahead, but the cost lingered. A flickering shield gauge, a strained drive, and the unspoken toll of isolation pressing in. One wrong move at Vega, and the galaxy's chaos would swallow them whole. Captain Elena Reyes gripped the armrest of her shuttle's command chair as the engines thrummed to life, the hum vibrating through her bones like a warning. Outside the viewport, the orbital station loomed, a skeletal ring of alien alloys, its docking bays still swarming with the debris of the failed summit. She glanced at her co-pilot, Jax Harlan, whose fingers danced over the console, rerouting power to evade the incoming patrol drones. "They're locking on," Jax muttered, his voice steady but edged with the grit of too many close calls. Sweat beaded on his forehead, but he didn't wipe it away. 3 clicks and closing. We punch it now or we become target practice. Elena nodded, her jaw set. The delegation's walkout had been her call, Earth's final stand against the Galactic Concord's suffocating demands. Now, with the galaxy fracturing into alliances and betrayals, their shuttle was the last thread connecting humanity to the stars. But the Krell enforcers weren't interested in diplomacy anymore. Their beams had already scorched the station's hull, a message that echoed the chaos rippling across 1,000 worlds. "Evade pattern Delta," she ordered, her voice cutting through the alarms. The shuttle lurched, inertial dampeners straining as Jax bankied hard left, slipping past the first drone's firing arc. A plasma bolt streaked by, close enough to heat the hull plating. Elena's mind raced. The Concorde's core worlds were imploding, trade routes collapsing, but Earth's outposts needed extraction signals sent yesterday. In the rear compartment, Dr. Mira Voss hunched over a jury-rigged comms array, her cautious nature yielding to necessity. Wires snaked from her fingers like lifelines, patching into the shuttle's auxiliary systems. "I've got a window," she said, not looking up. "But it's narrow. One burst to the nearest colony and the Krell will triangulate us in seconds." "Do it," Elena replied, eyes fixed on the tactical display. The drones reformed, their triangular forms glinting under the system's distant sun. Jax fired the countermeasures, flares blooming like false stars, and the shuttle dove toward the planet's rings below, a glittering hazard of ice and rock. The transmission fired with a sharp crackle. Mira exhaled, sealing the panel. "Coordinates sent. They know we're coming hot." Her hands trembled slightly, but she steadied them on the bulkhead, the weight of billions in potential refugees pressing down. Jax whooped as they threaded the needle through the rings, shards of ice pinging off the shields. "That's one for the history vids," he said, his wit surfacing even now. But Elena saw the strain in his eyes. The shuttle's fuel reserves were dipping red, and the Krell mothership was uncoiling from the station like a predator roused. A new alert blared, intercepted chatter from the enforcers. The galaxy's collapse wasn't just political. It was unraveling the very networks that held it together. Pirate fleets were rising in the voids, and without Earth's tech, the outer rims would starve. Elena's plan had been simple. Slip the net, rally the colonies, forge a human-led coalition. But as the mothership's shadow engulfed them, she wondered if grit alone could outrun the storm they'd unleashed. "Brace," Jax called, slamming the thrusters. The shuttle plunged deeper into the rings, evasion turning to survival. Ice fractured, around them in a symphony of cracks, each fragment a reminder of the fragile peace they'd shattered. Elena leaned forward, plotting their next vector. They weren't heroes in some epic tale, just stubborn survivors, betting everything on the next clever turn. And as the first Krell beam grazed their wing, she knew the cost was only beginning. Captain Alara Voss gripped the armrest of her command chair as the Endeavor's bridge shuddered under another barrage of plasma fire. Alarms blared, red lights strobing across the consoles like blood pulsing through veins. Evasive maneuvers. "Helmsman, get us behind that asteroid cluster," she barked, her voice cutting through the din without a tremor, though her knuckles whitened against the worn leather. Lieutenant Kai Ren, her tactical officer, hunched over his flickering holographic display, fingers flying across the interface. Sweat beaded on his forehead, but his eyes, sharp and unyielding, locked on the incoming signatures. "3 cruisers flanking us, ma'am. Galactic Alliance markings. They're not firing to disable. This is a kill order." He paused, glancing up with that wry twist to his mouth that always signaled bad news wrapped in grit. "Our shields are holding at 40%. If we don't break contact soon, we're space dust." Alara nodded, her mind racing through the fractured reports from the delegation's fallout. Earth's walkout had ignited this powder keg, old rivalries exploding into full-scale pursuit. The Endeavor carried the last uncompromised data core from the summit, proof of the Alliance's corruption that could rally the fringe worlds. Losing it meant humanity's isolation turned permanent, colonies cut off, billions at risk. She wouldn't let that happen. "Reroute auxiliary power to forward thrusters. We'll slingshot around the rocks and hit them with the railguns on the rebound." The ship groaned as it banked hard, inertial dampeners whining in protest. Through the viewport, the asteroid field loomed, a jagged maze of tumbling boulders etched with cosmic scars. Kai initiated the maneuver, his voice steady. "Power rerouted. Firing solution locked. But Captain, if they anticipate this..." "They won't," Ilara cut in, leaning forward. She trusted her crew's ingenuity over Alliance predictability any day. The Endeavor dove into the debris pinging off the hull like frantic rain. One asteroid loomed large, its surface pitted and unforgiving, filling the viewport until it seemed the ship would shatter against it. In the engineering bay below, Chief Mira Torres wrestled with a sparking conduit, her coveralls smeared with lubricant and singed fabric. "Come on, you stubborn beast," she muttered, jamming a makeshift patch into the plasma relay. Sparks flew, illuminating her determined scowl, lines etched from years of patching hulls under fire. The ship's heart stuttered, then roared back to life, auxiliary systems surging just as the bridge called for full burn. Up top, the slingshot worked. The Endeavor whipped around the asteroid, momentum hurling it toward the pursuers. Kai's railguns thrummed, kinetic slugs lancing out in silent fury, punching through the lead cruiser's shields with a bloom of debris. "Direct hit!" One down, venting atmosphere. But the other 2 adjusted, their weapons painting the Endeavor in targeting locks. Ilara's heart pounded as countermeasures deployed, flares and chaff blooming like desperate fireworks. "Helm, full reverse!" "Buy us time." The ship lurched, engines screaming against the void. Kai's console beeped urgently. "Incoming torpedoes, 3, no 4. Impact in 20 seconds. He looked to her, expectation heavy in the air. Ilara's mind flashed to the data core in the vault. Its secrets the only leverage left. They couldn't outrun this forever. "Prepare to vent the forward bays," she ordered, the words tasting like ash. It was a gamble, ejecting decoy modules laced with false signals mimicking the core's emissions. Risky, but humans didn't win by playing safe. And Kai ready the quantum disruptor. "If this fails, we make them regret chasing us." Mira's voice crackled over the intercom from below, laced with her trademark sarcasm. "Captain, if you're about to do something stupid up there, give a girl warning. I've got the engines hot, but they're not miracle workers." Ilara allowed a grim smile. "Noted, Chief, hold on tight." The torpedoes streaked closer, the bridge crew bracing as the ship shuddered. Vents hissed, modules tumbling out in a deceptive trail. The Alliance ships veered, locks shifting to the bait. For a heartbeat, silence reigned. Then chaos erupted anew as the disruptor fired, warping local space in a ripple that scrambled their sensors. The Endeavor surged forward, slipping into the asteroid's shadow. Ilara exhaled, the tension coiling tighter. They'd bought minutes, not hours. The galaxy's collapse was just beginning, and Earth's defiance had painted a target on them all. But as the stars wheeled past, she knew. They'd fight smart or not at all. Captain Ilara Voss gripped the edge of the console, her knuckles whitening as the holographic display flickered with incoming transmissions. The bridge of the UNS Vanguard hummed with urgency. Every crew member locked in their stations, but the weight of the galaxy's unraveling pressed down like an invisible gravity well. "Status on the relay nodes?" she barked, her voice cutting through the low buzz of alarms. Lieutenant Kai Ren, ever the steady hand, didn't look up from his screen. "3 down, Captain. The Krell blockade's jamming everything from Sector 7 onward. If we don't punch through soon, the fallback protocols will trigger. Total blackout across the Alliance grids." His fingers danced over the controls, rerouting power with the precision of someone who'd grown up fixing junkers on Mars colonies. Sweat beaded on his forehead, but his jaw stayed set, a quiet grit that Ilara relied on more than any fancy tech. She nodded, pushing down the knot in her stomach. The delegation's walkout had been the spark, Earth's envoys striding out of the galactic conclave in defiant silence, refusing to bow to the Xenarch's demands for resource tribute. Now the dominoes were falling, trade routes severed, fleets mobilizing, and whispers of full-scale war rippling through the void. Their mission? Deliver the counter-proposal before the chaos swallowed everything. But the stars weren't cooperating. "Helm, evasive pattern Delta 9, Ilara ordered, her eyes flicking to the viewport where enemy signatures blinked like predatory eyes. Ensign Mira Solis, the youngest on board with a wit sharper than her piloting skills, twisted the ship into a corkscrew dive. "On it, Cap. Let's see if these Krell slugs can keep up with human reflexes." The Vanguard shuddered as plasma bolts streaked past, close enough to rattle the deck plates. In the engineering bay below, Dr. Theo Grant wiped grease from his hands and patched into the comms. "Bridge, this is Grant. I've jury-rigged the quantum drive, should give us a 20% boost, but it'll burn out the coils after one jump. Your call." His voice carried that cautious edge, the kind born from too many close calls in the labs back home. Ilara could picture him there, surrounded by sparking conduits, his team of 2 technicians hustling to reinforce the shields. "Do it," she replied without hesitation. The stakes were too high for half measures. The galaxy's collapse wasn't just politics. It was lives. Colonies starving without supply lines, refugees adrift in the black. Earth's stand had bought them time, but time was bleeding out fast. As the drive hummed to life, a deep vibration coursing through the hull, Ilara felt the ship's pulse sync with her own resolve. The jump tore them through hyperspace, stars blurring into streaks of light, but emergence brought no relief. Alarms wailed as the sensors lit up. A Krell dreadnought dead ahead, its massive form blotting out the nebula's glow. "They're onto us," Kai muttered, his calm cracking just a fraction. "Boarding parties launching." Ilara straightened, her mind racing through contingencies. "All hands prepare for breach. Mira, get us to the auxiliary docking bay. We're going in hot." The ensign's grin flashed in the reflection of her console. "Aye, Captain. Time to show these tentacle heads what Earth's made of." As the Vanguard closed in, weapons hot and crew braced, Ilara spared a glance at the fading holomap. The delegation's silence had echoed across the stars, a human gambit that refused to beg or break. Now it was their turn to make it mean something. The dreadnought loomed larger, a behemoth of alien fury, but in that moment doubt flickered out like a snuffed ember. They would fight, adapt, endure, because that's what humans did when the galaxy tried to crush them. The collision klaxons blared, metal screeching against metal as they latched on. Kai sealed the bulkheads while Theo's voice crackled over the intercom. "Shields at 40%. We've got maybe 10 minutes before they cut through." Ilara drew her sidearm, the weight familiar and grounding. "Then we make every second count. For Earth." The first breach exploded in a shower of sparks, Krell warriors pouring through like a tide of armored nightmares. Mira fired from cover, her shots precise and unyielding.
Flank left,
she yelled, rolling to dodge a plasma arc. Kai covered her, his rifle barking in controlled bursts, dropping 2 assailants with grim efficiency. Ilara pushed forward, her team a tight knot amid the chaos. Theo joined them from a side passage, makeshift EMP grenade in hand. "This'll scramble their suits, cover me." He lobbed it into the fray, the device erupting in a pulse that sent Krell convulsing to the deck. For a heartbeat, the corridor cleared, the air thick with ozone and the acrid scent of burnt circuits. But the dreadnought's core was deeper, guarded by automated defenses that whirred to life, turrets swiveling, drones deploying in swarms. "We need to overload their command nexus," Ilara said, mapping the path in her head from the schematics she'd memorized en route. The risk was immense. One wrong move and they'd trigger a self-destruct that could vaporize half the sector. Kai took point, his cautious nature yielding to the fire in his eyes. "I'll draw fire. You plant the charges." He moved like a shadow, baiting the drones into a crossfire that Mira exploited with deadly grace. Theo wired the explosives, his hand steady despite the sweat dripping into his eyes. Almost there. A Krell officer, Captain Elena Vasquez, gripped the armrest of her shuttle's command chair, the hum of the engines vibrating through her bones as the vessel punched through the outer rings of Sol's heliosphere. Beside her, Dr. Liam Kerr hunched over the tactical display, his fingers dancing across holographic readouts, while Ambassador Nia Patel stood at the viewport, her silhouette framed against the stars. The galaxy's collapse had started with their walkout. Earth's quiet exit from the Concordance, a refusal to bow to the endless cycle of alien mandates that choked human innovation. Now, 3 months later, the transmissions flooding their comms painted a picture of unraveling. Trade routes severed, alliances fracturing, entire sectors plunging into resource wars without the steady hand of human logistics to hold them together. "They're hailing us again," Liam said, his voice steady but edged with fatigue. He adjusted his glasses, pushing back the wild tuft of hair that always escaped during crises. "Kragthar fleet this time, demanding we turn back to mediate the Orion arms skirmish." Elna shook her head, her dark braids swinging like a pendulum. "Patch it through, but keep the engines hot. We're not turning back, not after what they did." Her caution had kept the delegation alive through the initial fallout, but now it warred with the grit that had gotten them this far. The external challenge had been the Concordance's embargo, a blockade of human worlds meant to starve Earth into submission. It backfired spectacularly when human ingenuity rerouted supply chains through asteroid mines and rogue AI hacks, but the cost lingered, colonies on the brink, families separated, and a galaxy now begging for the very mediators they'd cast out. Nia's reflection in the glass showed lines etched deeper around her eyes, the witty negotiator reduced to terse commands. "This is Ambassador Patel of the United Terran Republic. State your purpose." Her tone carried the weight of their shared decision, the one that had shattered the fragile peace. The Kragthar's gravelly voice boomed through the speakers, laced with desperation. "Humans, the Vexari have glassed 2 of our outposts. Without your clever ship designs, our defenses crumble. Return, restore order." Liam snorted, muting the line briefly. "Clever ship designs? That's code for we need your warp stabilizers because ours keep exploding." His humor cut the tension, a remnant of the camaraderie that bound them through the failed summit, the sabotage attempts and the narrow escape from the core worlds. Elena leaned forward, her brave resolve hardening. "Tell them we're en route to Earth. If they want mediation, they'll have to come to us on our terms." She unstrapped, moving to join Nia at the viewport. The stars blurred as the shuttle accelerated, a streak of defiance against the chaos they'd unwittingly unleashed. The ambassador nodded, her cautious optimism flickering back to life. "Open channel." She faced the comm, voice clear and unyielding. "Kragthar command. The era of humans propping up your empires is over. But if you seek alliance as equals, send representatives to Luna Base. We'll rebuild, together or not." The line crackled with stunned silence before cutting out, replaced by a flurry of pings from other fleets echoing the plea. As the shuttle hurtled toward home, Liam plotted their final approach, weaving through the debris of abandoned freighters, tangible scars of the galaxy's unraveling. Elena watched Mars swell in the distance, red dunes a promise of solid ground. The conflict wasn't over. The embargo's echoes would ripple for years. Colonies still hungry, alliances tentative. But in that moment, with Nia's hand on her shoulder and Liam's quiet well done breaking the hush, they felt the weight of earned triumph. Earth's silence had spoken volumes, and the stars for once seemed to listen.